first of a series of webcasts we're going to be running for the National Online Recruitment Awards, or National Online Recruitment Academy, which is the body behind the awards. This is our very first show. We're going to be running a series of these shows, and our first show today is with our awards partner for the 20th anniversary National Online Recruitment Awards, the NORAs, who are Ph.Creative. Before we bring on Jim, who's my guest for this morning, I want to talk a little bit about the NORAs this year. As I say, this is the 20th anniversary of the NORAs. We started all those years ago. I think I was 12 when I began the NORAs. But the NORAs are awards that were set up really to recognize excellence in online recruitment. Online recruitment, obviously, at the turn of the century, way back then, was pretty new, but we could see even then that that was the future. The job boards and the recruitment websites that we saw back then were in large part emulating what had been advertised in newspapers in traditional media, and they were the new boys on the block. Not the new boys anymore, and of course the industry has evolved and changed considerably since then, through, as we know now, a couple of recessions and a couple of big booms as well. So in all of that time, the NORAs have been a bellwether, a measure of that excellence in recruitment, how the industry has progressed, how the industry has moved forward. And we always look at things from a candidate's perspective. We're always interested in what the market looks like from the job seeker's viewpoint. So whenever we're judging websites, whenever we're looking at what employers, recruitment agencies, job boards, publications, anyone who's advertising vacancies or giving advice in the careers, we're always doing it from a candidate's perspective. It's great when job boards, for example, give great value for money, but candidates are unaware of that. They look for jobs, they search for jobs, they register on sites, they apply, they experience the websites in the way of the consumer, and as a consumer, they can be quite fickle, and they're affected by whatever else they see online, which of course has evolved in that time. So that brings me around to my very special guest today. Let me bring on screen Jim Taylor. Jim is MD of PH Digital, which is part of Ph.Creative. Jim, good morning. How the devil are you today?
Hello, Stephen. I'm good. It's Friday, so looking forward to the weekend. It's been a long week, but challenging week, but really exciting, productive. Lots going on at PH at the moment.
Fantastic. Everyone always feels good about a Friday. So it's been a productive week. You've had a good week so far.
Yeah, busy. If I look a little bit tired, it's just because it's been one of those weeks.
Fantastic. I can see you've got your branded hoodie on there.
Yeah, of course. Always important.
ABB, always be branding. So Ph.Creative, there are some people out there, not too many I hope, but there are some people out there who they'll know the name, but they won't know too much about Ph.Creative. Can you give me a bit of a background so that people have a broader understanding of the breadth of work that PH carries out with the clients that you have?
Yeah, of course. So Ph.Creative, we're an employer brands agency. Our headquarters being in Liverpool, but we're obviously global with offices in London and across America, mostly in San Diego. In terms of the type of work we do and deliver is mostly employer branding, talent attraction, candidate experience. We also obviously deliver careers websites and recruitment marketing, mostly focused in SEO. But it's not just that. In terms of like the talent attraction stuff, we do a breadth of different types of creative in terms of like games and platforms, things like escape rooms. It's all experience by design.
Yeah. So in terms of people's understanding, whenever I look at recruitment advertising agencies is the one that I would be most familiar with, and I'm not even that familiar with those. But going beyond that to the broader creative agencies that are involved in the recruitment sector, I think people have that old-fashioned view of them, going back to advertising agencies in the early 2000s or the 90s, that those agencies that would help with advertising, display adverts in traditional newspapers. But evolving from there, what did PH look like at the beginning, and why was it founded in the first place?
It's a great question. I suppose. I've been there for 12 years now, so I can probably give you the full history of Ph.Creative. Yeah. So it was founded by our CEO, Brian Adams, 15 years ago. It was a mostly focused on the generation of lead generation websites. So we had our own bespoke platform to do that. So I joined about 3 years into that. I joined as an actual developer. So I was developing front end of those websites themselves. There was only 6 or 7 of us at a time. We were just in a very small studio within Liverpool before we obviously moved to our later studio. And then Google Dave, as you may know, he joined, I think, a year or 2 later, and that's when we developed our inbound marketing department. So we were beginning to offer those services in terms of SEO, PPC, and social for those websites. And then, we began to work more in the niche that we work with now in terms of clients. So I think one of probably our first was Nationwide, which was probably one of the first responsive careers websites that have been developed. We went on to work with Virgin Media, which I think we became a little bit famous for the kind of experience case study that we created. BT was obviously a big milestone for us. And then I think around that time, that's when we were really getting into our niche. We were working in terms of developing recruitment websites and careers websites, but we were still seen as a digital marketing agency. So that's when we did our whole own rebrand, looked at our own employer brand and came up with the rainbow, came up with the Defenders of Happiness. Everybody loves their job.
So Google Dave is probably the most well-known person from PH. He appears everywhere. He's been on stages all over the world, and he's a great ambassador for the business. And if he personifies the brand, then that's the great thing. If he represents the company well, then he's getting his message across very well. Would you say that there's a philosophy about PH in the way that you go about business?
I would say so in terms of our culture and our approach. I think in terms of like what when Dave's on stage as an example, it's not a selling approach. It's more of a like, this is how we think. So what we're trying to do is give value back to the community. This is the type of work we've produced. If that's something that we can help you with, obviously get in touch. But it's more of a helping and being strategic. So like when I talk to lots of prospects, trying to understand like the problems and their objectives, and how we can help them achieve that. It's like a partner. It's very much of a relationship rather than a sales approach.
As Dave often says on stage, it's not about, people don't remember what you do or what you said, but they remember how you made them feel. That always seems to me that's an ethos that goes through PH, that it's not just ticking the boxes and we'll do this, that, and the other, like a Lego kit. You seek to understand your clients. You look to go below the surface and find out what motivates them, what drives them, where they want to get to from where they are now, and that takes a lot more questioning from a creative agency point of view, where you're trying to understand your clients, not just do what you're instructed to, but sometimes push back, sometimes ask them difficult questions, but really to push for that understanding, because that will come out in the work.
Yeah, of course. I think the majority of the prospects I meet, they think they know what they want. They're telling you like, we want this, we want that. But I always start with, well, tell me, what does success look like? Like if we produced a career site in 6 months' time, like what would that be delivering? What are your objectives? And then we come up with those solutions. And sometimes it's not a case of like, we might be in a position to say, this isn't what you need. You need something completely different. Depending on your budget or your time scales, like this would be our recommendation and our approach. Sometimes it's not using us either. It's like, you could do this yourself. So it's definitely putting, trying to support them and help them. But it's always like, what is the problem we're trying to solve? And looking for those solutions.
So when employers out there, and you touched on Nationwide and BT and famously the case study with Virgin Media, where you were able to put a cash pound figure on money saved or money generated through the activities in employer branding and talent attraction, and people love that, because when when people in talent attraction are looking to justify what they want done to their bosses, if they can attach a cash figure to it, then it really helps to make the case all the more. But when it comes to dealing with new clients, new major clients, and they're used to dealing with creative agencies and instructing them what to do, there must be a learning process where they come around to the way you do things. Not that you're dictating to them, but to understand, well, this is the PH way.
Well, it's learning it's learning each other's ways of working. Getting to know each other. I think that's what we do at the very beginning.
Two-way street.
Yeah, exactly. It's like at the very beginning of the discovery phase of what we do is understand who the stakeholders are. What their pain points are, their ways of working, for sure.
Yeah. So going back to the clients that you've worked with, obviously some of them are phenomenal, huge brands that everyone knows. And I would imagine on the other end of the scale, you'll have clients who are successful in their own field, but they won't be household brands in the same way. But I would imagine you approach them with the same, the same philosophy, the same intent to get a result for them. With the sort of clients that you're working with, what would be maybe the best example of how you were able to identify their need and bring that around and produce something that's really going to work for them, and what did success mean to that client?
In terms of we do work with large global brands. I suppose when you talk about not knowing who those brands are, I suppose the best example for us would probably be someone like GVC. So if you're not familiar with GVC, one of the biggest betting games company on the planet, and they own dozens of brands, including Ladbrokes, Coral, bwin. So we helped them with their employer brands, which was for the good of entertainment, and the length and breadth of work that we developed for them was just phenomenal in terms of activating the employer brand right through to their careers website. I mean, in terms of the first month of the careers website itself, when it went live, I think it produced something like 19,000 applications in the first month, which was I think it was an 18% conversion, which was phenomenal in terms of the benchmark of what we want to achieve. But they're just one of the biggest brands that not everyone's famous for. But what I loved about that was, with all the different brands under that umbrella, is bringing them all together to sit with under an employer brand, to see them all singing from the same hymn sheet and really buy into that brand was amazing to see.
So they're what you might term a sleeping giant in terms of you mentioned they are activating their brand. So they already had a huge amount of goodwill, and the brands within the group had big recognition factor, but they maybe weren't leveraging those to get the response from a TA point of view that they could expect if only they put in place X, Y, and Z in a strategy. How would you go about that?
Well, that's obviously a lot of strategic work in terms of workshops and asking questions and listening to their employees. Lots of surveys, lots of interviews, asking questions of ex-employees as well, to really unearth the harsh realities of what it's like to thrive in that organization. And what we saw, I mean, it's Google Dave was standing on stage when they activated it internally. And this wasn't just a couple of people sitting around a few desks. This was thousands of people sitting in an auditorium, and thousands of because they're a global organization, thousands of others dialing in, and to see them really sort of buy into that brand in terms of their mission, their vision was extraordinary. But yet that is our approach. It's to obviously ask lots of questions and to what our strategy team do is unreal in terms of being able to distill all of that information down just to come up with some sort of proposition for the good of entertainment. And Dave talks about getting goosebumps. That's the type of when you see things like that, and when you look at the pillars and the values and how we've sort of articulated that internally, externally, I think that's what sets us apart as well as the creative.
Yeah, I suppose most people out there who have not worked in this sector, if you ask them to think about any kind of creative agency, then they would imagine a scene like, something from Mad Men, where you've got a bunch of guys, and it's usually guys, sitting around smoking and drinking and coming up with ideas off the top of their head. But from what you're saying, that it's not about someone imagining things. It's about going out and gathering the information, as you say, speaking to the employees, understanding that, well, every employer already has a brand or a reputation before you get there, whether they like it or not. They already have one, and it's not really possible to decide what your brand's going to be, because your brand is made up of so many different things. So in the first place, you need to take the temperature of the company, take the pulse, pull in all of that information. When you do that, what does that look like in terms of the acres of information, and how do you organize that to have an understanding of an organization?
As I mentioned before, in terms of those workshops and those interviews and asking specific questions, in terms of how you do that and distill that down, I wouldn't have a clue, because I'm not a strategist, but like our strategies team are, unbelievable in terms of like what they do, and trying to, for me, like, obviously my background is tech. I could never figure out how they actually do that. It's magic in terms of how they are able to distill all that down. It's a job in itself.
But it's based on statistics and hard facts and knowledge, as opposed to guesswork.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. As you said, like, it's not like what they say their brand is, it's what their employees are saying it is, and it's taking all that information and looking for those common themes and trying to distill that down in terms of, this is who you are, like this is what we've heard, and how we play that back, and how to sort of summarize it very concisely. We've got a great framework to do that in terms of our employer brand framework. But then that is then the building blocks of anything from a talent attraction point of view. When we create these toolkits, able to take everything from that framework, whether it's a social campaign or a microsite or the careers website, we've got everything there to lean on. I think it's quite difficult to work. It's not difficult, but it's more challenging when you approach a brand new careers website project or recruitment project, and the employer brand is either missing or it's outdated, and they're not going to invest in it. Or even when there's an employer brand that we haven't produced and it's got missing ingredients. So our approach to when we go into the creative from strategy is taking that proposition and leading with a content first approach. We don't necessarily draw wireframes on a page and say, let's put a load of words in these boxes. It's very strategic. It's like, let's jump into creative with the messaging aligned with their personas and their pain points, and turn that into a motion prototype, to really get our clients excited.
I would imagine, so if every company has an employer brand, a bit like a personality, then you would hope and want for that to be consistent over the years, but evolving. It's difficult to just, if an MD of a chain of coffee shops decided, right, tomorrow we're gonna be this type of company, we're gonna change our branding, we're gonna become a hipster, cool, this, that, and the other type of coffee shop, when they never were before. That's difficult to do, or maybe even possible to do, because if it's not you, it's not you. But getting back to the technical side of things, when your creative team have gathered in all that information, and they then give instructions to the technical team, right, this is what we'd like to create here, this is what we'd like you to build. How do you take that information and put that together in websites, video, images, and of course the text that people would be reading on a company's website and all materials?
Yes, like, our process is collaborative. So even our developers are involved at the very early stages of forming what the brief is, and that brief is based on the strategy. So what we come up with is the strategy on a page. What is the employer brand? What are the technical requirements? What are the pain points for the persona? So from a technical perspective, it's like, what are we integrating? Is it an ATS? Is it a CRM system? Like, what are the challenges and the problems that the candidate's trying to solve? We're very much focused in the the tech side of it in terms of like experience. So, you know, trying to achieve like under 3 seconds for a page to load, because we know that's what Google is focused on. So when we design and build collaboratively, it's all mobile first, you know, because that's where Google is now. Google is focused on mobile. It's superseded desktop. So that's how we approach, and you know, we want to give a lightning fast experience to candidates to ensure that the page loads within 3 seconds. I think for every second after 3 seconds, you lose 10% of your audience.
Oh, really?
So yeah, so imagine how many candidates you're potentially losing because they're sitting there on a poor 3G connection, not being able to load your page because it's just bloated and it's heavy. You know, that's something that has to be considered as part of that a creative approach. You know, if we're going to stick tons of video and imagery on the page, there has to be a bit of a give and a get in that as well. Yeah.
So on that technical side, I'm as anyone will know, I love the technical aspects of well, anything pretty much. But when it comes to the NORAs, we are balancing the look and feel of a website with the functionality of a website, and you know what it will do in practical terms for candidates. And one of the most important things that candidates feel and sense, but they're not counting it. They don't know it for sure. Is that site speed, how well they can progress through a site, how quickly they can find a site in the first place. So you know that comes into the SEO side of things, and the ability to navigate around the site, knowing full well that every entry point or every page on a website is a landing page. If you search for X, Y, and Z and you're landed on a job within a website, then a candidate needs to know, well, okay, where I am, the page needs to make sense, and they're starting their journey on that website from possibly one of the the far off pages within the site, but the whole thing still has to make sense. So, and what I'm getting to here is, in the evolution of recruitment websites in the past 12 years you've been with PH, going back then, what were the key things that a recruitment website had to have then, and how has that been supplemented with other functionality as we've gone from then to now?
That's a good question. As mentioned before, with like Nationwide being the first responsive, that's obviously, you know, past now. Every website is responsive. I think the approach of any website, whether it's Creative, Recruitment or any other, is it's not about, as you mentioned, landing on the homepage and trying to find your way around. When I speak to prospects and demo our platform, as mentioned, when we ask what success looks like, I always do that search. You know, let's start with Google. You know, Google is now probably your biggest competitor in terms of wanting to keep you on page one of Google. They've got Google for Jobs and initiatives as well. So 9 times out of 10, a candidate will land on a job description page, and I suppose that's where we begin to focus. You know, a job description is where they're probably going to make some sort of decision of whether they apply for that job or not. But it's our job to not just get them to apply, but really what we want to do is educate the candidates. So we want them to immerse them in other bits of content that brings to life the employer brands and the EVP. So as they're looking at the job description, they're able to see like what team is that within, you know, where's the location? And if they're looking at the location, like what's it like to work in this location? What's it like to live in the location? You know, if they were going to relocate, where are places to socialize and eat and drink? Because candidates do their research. They'll look on Glassdoor and LinkedIn and your social channels. And they're probably the candidates that you want, because they are basically trying to align themselves with your brand.
It means they're more informed before they apply.
Exactly. You know, Brian, our CEO, has recently released an employee brand book called The Give and the Get, where he talks about repelling talent and attracting the few. You know, it's about being honest and you know, highlighting and showcasing those harsh realities, because you don't want thousands of CVs when 999 of them are not relevant or not good enough. So you want that. So if they do come to the job description, you want to immerse them in all that content and ensure that they understand what they're about, and then when they convert, that they're the right candidates. But what we
sorry, carry on.
I was going to say, what we built a tool around 2 years ago called Job Page Grader. So you can go to jobpagegrader.com. I've got it set up here. I'll show you the quick example.
Job page grade is brilliant. I've had a go on it, but let's have a look if you've got it to share.
So if you can see my screen, so job page grade, essentially what you do is you put the URL in of your job detail page. So as an example, here's a job on our website where we're looking for a senior designer. So you paste the URL into the bar, and what it does is it grades the quality of the job description. Okay. So I tend to start with this when I talk to prospects. As I say, like, this is the key landing page, and we break a job description down in terms of engagement, conversion, SEO, and performance. Like,
it's a good job. You got a good score there.
It is a good job, yeah.
Demoing live. Yeah.
Well, interestingly, like, I think it's scraped about 10,000 URLs in the 2 years it's been live, and the average score is 54%.
Yeah.
Most job descriptions are just like text and bullet lists and aren't very engaging. You can see from ours, we've got lots of photography, testimonials. It's quite creative. And then as you go into each section, it talks about how that breaks it down. So we tend to focus in the things that the client can control, not in terms of like coding. So they can control the content, they can control the sentiment, the readability, things like gender bias, which ours is a little bit more feminine than masculine. So there's lots of great insights in here in terms of to improve the quality of the job description, like schema markup, to be able to help you rank for Google for Jobs is really, really important. So if you've not seen this tool, go and check that out. But that's where I tend to start in terms of a career site, in terms of approach. Let's take a look at your job descriptions, because that will then tell me a picture of what the rest of your content is going to look like.
Yeah. Would you say that of the technical functionality on a let's take a job page itself, on that page, the technical functionality, has that evolved in the past year, particularly with the pandemic? Do people have different expectations? Yes, we expect that every website, every job advert page is mobile first, because most people are going to be arriving on small screens. Yes, we expect that people can apply easily through their mobile device. Yes, we expect that every website is going to be secure. It's going to be HTTPS. Are there any changes that you'll have seen to what candidates want in the past year or 6 months, especially? Maybe things like video, where they want to understand more about the work environment before they make that application? Yeah,
I'm just thinking about your previous question as well, in terms of like an employer brand, which in our eyes should be refreshed every 3 years. I suppose going through this pandemic it's a great time for organizations to look at themselves and do the right thing, be remembered for doing the right thing during this pandemic. But in terms of careers websites, I suppose some of the trends I've been seeing is obviously number one is definitely remote work. So where most careers and recruitment sites from a search perspective was about like choose a location, like remote work now has changed globally in terms of like being able to work from home. I personally, I feel really productive and have a better work-life balance, being able to see my family more. But like, I definitely say that's one thing. I think diversity and inclusion, equity has definitely become more of a focal point as well. Not necessarily just because of the pandemic, but obviously with the Black Lives Matter movement, and we've even looked at ourselves from a commitment point of view, what that looks like. What else has changed? Technically, I wouldn't say so much. Obviously it's been hard for most clients to be able to move forward with a careers website, budgets and all this kind of stuff in terms of where the world is right now. But I suppose like that's even more reason to have a careers website and to make sure it's ready, because obviously as we get out of this pandemic, there's going to be a mass hire. We're just about to release a new tool as well. I won't say too much about it because it's we haven't.
You've got my attention now.
Yeah, so we're going to release a new free tool which you can literally just download and integrate into your website. You may have seen it across other brands. It's basically a talent directory of where you can showcase your employees that you've obviously had to let go because of with layoffs because of the pandemic. But that's just another way of like doing the right thing, is like you care about your employees and you want the best. You want the best for them.
Well, I was going to ask about that earlier on. So from an employer branding point of view, the past 6 months has obviously been a traumatic event for the whole employed sector in the UK and worldwide. So the branding of every organisation has inevitably been affected by how they've responded to that, how they've either kept staff on, had staff working from home, furloughed staff. Unfortunately, sometimes had to lay off staff. Some employers, if you've been furloughed, they would make up to the full salary. So there's certain things that some employers have been doing or have been able to do, and that others haven't. But that inevitably means that their messaging as part of their branding has to change to reflect that. They want to show, or the good employers, they want to show, well, this is what we do and this is how we've done it, and we're transparent, we're open, and we try and be as fair as possible. So I would imagine from a branding point of view, you would expect that every employer through their website and messaging would include that message. Yeah,
to a degree, as I mentioned, like everyone should review like their own sort of EVP and how you refine that to meet like in terms of the perks and the benefits of what is now. I suppose what we've seen as well is as I mentioned with like the layoffs and people losing their jobs is the exiting and the offboarding experience. When we talked about like Virgin as a CX case study, it's like that had like the experience from the candidates of not receiving a job and then not being communicated to and not having a great experience had a knock-on effect on the consumer brand.
Oh yeah,
like that's just as important as it was now.
Mm-hmm. So if you have unfortunately had to let staff go, you really want them to be good leavers, people who have good things to say about the organisation, and A, would still think of it positively, B, might consider coming back if that opportunity came up, and C, would still recommend it as an employer to others who are asking them about it.
Yeah. I mean, like we look for current employee advocacy, but you also want ex-employees as well. And referrals is a big thing as well. Just because you leave an organization, you want to leave an organization on good terms, and and there may be opportunities in the future where you see an opportunity by your ex-employee that might be relevant to someone else that in your network.
And again, it rolls on to their consumer brand. If someone had worked for, I don't know, say Boots, and they unfortunately had to be let go, you wouldn't want that person swearing, "I'll never shop in Boots again." You would want them still to feel good about the organisation because it was dealt with in a professional manner, and they didn't feel an unfairness through the process.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about doing the right thing and create, and it's all about experience by design.
Yeah. So Louise passed on a question from someone on LinkedIn. Incidentally, we're streaming this show on Facebook, LinkedIn, and on Twitter. But Adam on LinkedIn has asked for mobile. And this is maybe a question that goes back to a few years ago. But would you go for responsive or an app? I've not seen too many apps for employers these days. Does that still happen in some instances?
I'd definitely say a responsive website because it's more accessible. With apps, obviously, you have to download those, Android, Apple, whatever that may be. I'd say apps are more bespoke to, like we built referral tools as apps and other numerous platforms. But I'd definitely say responsive web is the way to go.
Yeah, if you're thinking about HTML5 and the ability to continually update a site, then that's more straightforward than updating apps where the operating systems render your app out of date, so you then have to re-engineer the thing. But if you can do it on a website, then there's that. One thing I like to see is not just responsive sites, but sites that when they detect that you're on a smaller screen, they might change the content slightly rather than giving you lots and lots of text to read on a on a small screen that you're having to zoom in to see, but they might change the content to be more visual, more graphics, more videos, and that kind of adaptive nature to the device that you're using. Is that something that is part and parcel of your recommendations to clients?
Well, as I said, like we are mobile first in terms of our approach. So like what the content looks like on mobile should be what it is on desktop. You really wouldn't want to be rewriting or changing your content for those different what we call viewports or device sizes. in terms of the experience from going from mobile to a desktop or even a TV or whatever that is, it may be that on a mobile device that video doesn't autoplay. It might be a static image, or some of the animation might be isn't as sort of, in terms of the transitions and the movement. But when you get to desktop, when you're connected to a Wi-Fi, that's where you can add video and more engaging stuff. And like you mentioned before, with job descriptions, like video, us as humans, we're more creative. We like to see visually. We want to see great photography, and we want to see video. So having that within your careers website, I'd say, was important. To see so many websites, which is just reams and reams of words and large paragraphs of content. We are, in the way we consume content now with the likes of Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn. It's short, sharp burst. It's digestible chunks of content. So that's in terms of when we design for mobile first. It's having that sort of UI structure of headings, paragraphs, images, and the more images you can use to tell that story, the better.
Yeah. What I've certainly seen in the past couple of years is increasing studies and stats on different demographics responding to different types of content. So the traditional text-based job advert will not convince someone who has a previous understanding of an organization that thinks, oh no, that's not the kind of company for me. It's not going to persuade them. Whereas images and video is going to show the workplace. It's going to show the people that you're working alongside. It's going to show the hiring manager, and that sort of thing can change people's bias, if you like, towards or against an organization. With, as you were saying before, you would dissuade candidates who would otherwise apply because it's easy to apply, but you would encourage candidates to apply who never were going to before. And that might be people from more diverse backgrounds. It might be more women. It might be underrepresented parts of the population that you would like to employ, but they just haven't been applying before. One thing you touched on there, and actually I'm gonna hold this until we have another show, because I'm really I've got 1,000 questions, Jim. But one thing you touched on, and I'll save it for the next time, is smart TVs, the growth of smart TVs, and people consuming web-based content and job searching through smart TVs. I think is going to be a real growth area in the months and years coming up. I'm noticing the time, which is why I'm looking to wind things up. Jim, thank you very much for joining me today. I do hope you come back for another show in the weeks between now and the NORAs. Thank you everyone who's tuned in, everyone who's been commenting on the chat bar, and of course on Facebook and LinkedIn and Twitter. Please come back. This is just the first of a series of shows. We're going to be profiling companies who are potential contenders for the NORAs this year, companies who have been finalists and winners in the NORAs before, and of course some of our companies who will be supporting us in the next 2 months in the build up to the online recruitment event, which will be the NORAs awards event this year, which is on the 10th of November. So right now, our judges are in conclave, as they say in St. Paul's. They're behind lock and key. They're judging 503 separate recruitment websites. We had fewer nominations this year, understandable given the circumstances, but we still had I think almost 7,500 nominations from the public for 503 separate recruitment websites this year. That means that our judges have an immense job to do, and they'll be going through each of those submitted websites from a candidate's perspective. So the finalists will be announced in a couple of weeks' time, I think on the 6th of October. So a bit of time towards that. But in the meantime, we're going to be having more shows like this in the coming weeks. So please subscribe. Please come back and catch us for more shows. Next week, I think on Tuesday, we have McCarthy Recruitment, where I'm speaking with Ian McMillan there, and I think also Kate McCarthy. So in the meantime, Jim, can I say thank you very much for joining me today. Thank you very much, PH, for being part of the 20th Annual National Online Recruitment Awards, and have a fantastic weekend.
Thanks, Stephen. It was a pleasure, and thanks for having us on.
Thanks very much. Thanks, then.
Bye-bye.